Well, hello, DCO Nation. Welcome back to another DCO Live. Looks like we got a ton of guys on tonight. I appreciate everybody. Um, Again, hopefully, I've got all of the audio issues worked out from a couple of weeks ago. If everything is coming through, you guys, I really appreciate a thumbs up. Make sure you guys can hear everything. But before I bring on Steve, as you guys can see him already into the picture there, I just wanted to first mention just a quick couple of announcements. This weekend down in Charleston is the Hadrolls Expo, and it's at the Shriners. I think it's the Shriners Auditorium, and so head down there. They've got a bunch of great seminars going on. I know the big name, he's been coming now for the last couple of years, is C.A. Richardson. I tried to get into a couple of his seminars and it has been packed. So get there early if you guys want to see CA. And let me see who is all on here. Gosh, I mean, just a ton of guys. Everett, Heath, Captain Bob is on. Captain Bob, appreciate you. Oh, hey, another quick congratulations to Captain Bob is coming up on his 100th episode on the Hook with Captain Bob. Hey, congratulations, buddy. That's absolutely awesome. You know, 100 episodes. What do you say? I mean, I'm only on like 37, so I'm just a newbie at this. He is the old salty when it comes to this. So, but all right. So, without further ado, like they always say, the guest tonight is Steve Leo. He is outdoor enthusiast. He hunts, he fishes, and I wanted to bring him on to talk sheepshead fishing. He is absolutely fantastic. He's got a YouTube channel called Coastal Carolina Living. And so, Steve, how did you get in to fishing? Give us a little bit of a background.
Okay, yeah. So growing up, I'm from Massachusetts originally, Western Mass, and yeah, my father got me into fishing, mostly just freshwater, little John boat type deal, and used to saltwater fish a few times a year down in Cape Cod, and we started coming down here for vacation. Eventually moved down here after college, and actually, bring it all full circle. Your YouTube channel kind of inspired me to pick it up. Getting back into saltwater fishing when we had, moved down here after college.
Okay, checks in the mail. I appreciate that shout out.
Oh, that's funny. So yeah, and just kind of took quite a bit of learning. Just a pretty steep learning curve from mostly being a freshwater guy, and even just the differences from the saltwater fishing we do up north to kind of the stuff that we're doing around here is a pretty steep learning curve. At least it was for me.
Hmm. Yeah. Real quick before we jump back into it, I got to give another shout out. Carrie Browning with Release Over 20. Sorry, I didn't see you on there before, but he just put something in the chat that said Release Over 20 will have a booth down there. And I think you guys are one of the originals. So they've always had a booth down there. David Flad, I think, is going to be doing a seminar. So yeah, I appreciate that, Carrie. Sorry about passing you over, man. I didn't even see you. Oh, I'm going to be there on Saturday, and I've got your hat. So all right, back to so let's talk sheepshead fishing. This is the time of the year where I'm already starting to see it on YouTube where everybody is sheepshead fishing. So the colder
Hmm.
water, everybody is kind of transitioning from the summer patterns into sheepshead fishing. So let's
Right.
just kind of start with the basics. What is your rod and reel setup and your line that you're using?
Okay. So lately I've been running toadfish, their convict rod and reel. So it is, I don't know how well this will come through, but I believe it's a 510. Yep, 511, medium heavy. So this one's a little stiffer than I used to use. It was an ugly stick. I've got believe this is 20 or 30 pound braid for my main line. And then I've got, let's see how we can do this so I can show everybody.
Okay.
So main line, and then eggs, just Carolina rig, so egg sinker, bead, swivel. In terms of weights, I carry a variety. You know, you can get like variety packs at tackle stores or Amazon, whatever.
Okay.
And then I think this is 20-pound fluoro. I keep anywhere from like 12 to 30. And it kind of really just depends on where I'm fishing. I have some spots that are kind of more open water, so I'll go a little lighter. But if I'm around like a ton of junk, then I'll kind of go a little heavier,
Okay.
take a little of the abrasion. This toadfish reel is a 3000 series. And that's kind of what I used to have on this rod, which used to be my older one. This is a 5-foot light action ugly stick. It is tiny, but I used this for years, and I've caught, I don't know how many sheepshead on it, plenty over 20. And I like it almost a little better than the toadfish because it's super sensitive.
Okay.
But it doesn't have as much backbone, so you kind of have to play your drag a little bit more
Okay.
to get the fish in.
So what kind of hook do you have on the end of that leader?
So I usually have two different kinds in my kayak. So owner, always mosquito hooks. I don't know. These are 1/0 circle hooks, but they're mosquito hooks. So let's see.
Yep. Okay.
I'll go up to 2/0 too if they don't have the 1/0.
Uh-huh.
And if you don't want to do the circle hooks, they have just the regular ones. And I think the hookup ratio to me is a little better when you don't do the circle hooks, but you never have to worry about gut hooking either a sheepshead or you get a lot of bycatch when you're sheepshead fishing. So
Right. Right.
kind of a little more conservation mindset there when you're using those little circle hooks.
Right. Right. So getting back to your weight, so you're using a Carolina rig, and
Yep.
so your weight, are you trying to go as light as possible, or you just don't really care and you just want it on the bottom because you know the bait is going to kind of come off of the bottom?
That's a good question. It depends on the day, the tide, I guess.
Okay.
If it's a real weak tide, I'm going to go as light as possible because I hate when I feel like I'm glued to the bottom, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And then, if it's a strong tidal coefficient and it's really ripping, I'm going to go to the heaviest size. But then there's some times where I'll go maybe in between on a strong tide because I want the bait to kind of get into the structure. So it's going to depend on the tide and kind of where you're fishing and the structure you're fishing.
Okay.
If I'm next to a dock, right, and I'm paddling to stay parallel to it, sometimes I want my bait to roll underneath it because a lot of times those fish will be even suspended up under the dock, which is kind of harder to get to if you're just glued to the bottom.
Right. Right. And if you're glued to the bottom, does that take away the sensitivity of those light bites of the sheepshead? You just can't.
Yeah.
Just can't feel it. Okay.
For sure. Yeah, I usually will drop down, reel up 3 or 4, and then just finger on the line. But then there's other days where they're more suspended, they're higher up. They're not always going to be on the bottom. I've got videos of them coming up like within a few inches of the surface, just kind of coming up, diving back down, coming up, diving back down. So they're all over the water column.
Now, I should have brought one of my hooks in, but a lot of guys use a bottom sweeper hook and put that bait right on the bottom. Oh, okay, yeah, you've got one. Perfect. I'm actually going to go out this weekend, and that's what I'm going to be using. So does the technique change at all? Again, just kind of go as light as possible and...
Yeah, there's guys that's all they use is botter sweeping jigs, and I've just never, I'm not gonna say I never catch them on it, I just don't like how glued I feel to the bottom and just the size of the hook. So if you can see, like it's pretty thick.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening compared to this tiny little mosquito hook,
Right.
you'll end up kind of crushing a lot of the crab. And I find that either the bycatch or the sheepshead will just a lot of times just suck it off real quick.
Oh,
Where you
really?
kind of like thread it in there with the mosquito hook, like the crab is it's still alive, and it's not gonna just kind of get sucked off real quick like it happens with those thicker bottom sweeper jig hooks.
Okay. Um, a question just popped in from Steve. Steve said, "How about a drop shot rig? Have you ever used a drop shot where the weight's on the bottom and your hook's maybe, I don't know, 12 inches or so off the?"
Yeah, so have you ever seen like the rigs that the guys use off the piers, like the double dropper rigs?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I've caught them on that. That's probably going to be the closest kind of to a drop shot that I've caught. But that was the Outer Banks off of like some of the bridges and stuff like that.
Okay. Okay. All right. So let's work down. What type of bait do you usually use? What's kind of your favorite? And then what have you tried?
Fiddler crabs are always going to be my go-to if I can get them. Sometimes when it's real cold, like like it's been lately, the bait shops have trouble getting them. And if you can't go out and find them yourself, I've used canned corn, canned oysters.
What? Oh, okay. Back up. Back up. You can't throw out canned corn and not not try to. Yeah, we're not going to roll past that one. Okay. All right. So you're gonna have to explain this one because yeah, I didn't know sheepshead were vegetarians. Getting into a.
So I guess the idea behind the canned corn is a lot of guys when they'll go out, if they're on pilings or whatever, they'll bring like a small, almost like a shovel or something to scrape off the barnacles.
Okay.
And so when you're scraping off the barnacles, a lot of times you'll just see stuff like float in the water, right? The sheepshead are gonna come up and eat it. A lot of times it looks just like canned corn, like it just looks like a piece of yellow corn. So
Okay.
that's kind of the idea is you'll scrape up, kind of chum them up, maybe throw a little corn in there, and then just put a couple pieces on a tiny, tiny little hook. And you're just pretty much trying to, trick them into thinking it's like a chunk of barnacle or something like that. But that's kind of like a last resort if I can't find fiddlers or if I couldn't get, some oysters or something like that.
Okay. Okay. But if you're not chumming, then you're not throwing corn then. You're just not going to a dock and threading on, 3, 4 kernels and dropping it in. You're chumming first to bring them up to okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay. Have you ever used shrimp? I've seen guys
Yeah.
use shrimp.
Yeah, that's how we used to do it in the Outer Banks a lot.
Okay.
I've never really tried it around here. A few times, again, if I can't get fiddlers, and that's kind of the way it goes. Is like I'll have a pecking order. Like, all right, I can't get fiddlers. Do I have like frozen shrimp in the freezer? No. All right. Do I have a spot where I know I can pick some oysters and kind of make that work? No. Okay. Canned corn. So there's like
Okay.
a hierarchy of kind of what I'll
Okay.
use.
Okay. Yeah. Carrie actually said, "Ever used frozen peas? Saw a video for catching that." Said it blew his mind. I was like, again, corn, peas. The hell are we doing here? Okay. I get a bag of frozen peas is a hell of a lot cheaper than fiddler crabs or a dozen shrimp or something, and I'm all for it. So, have you ever tried frozen peas?
No, I've tried a few different variants of just whatever canned corn or canned. Man, they were these white things. I forget the name of them. It might have been some kind of pea.
Okay.
But some of the issues you run into with the corn is it stays on really poorly.
Okay.
It's just so
Okay.
soft. So if you can find like a harder, vegetable that I guess would resemble a barnacle floating in the water.
Right, right. Okay, one last one. I actually watched a video today. Justin Menendez down in Florida, he was out sheepshead fishing and he used sand fleas. Have you ever used sand fleas sheepshead fishing?
I have, and I've never had luck with it.
Never had luck with them. Okay. Yeah,
They were frozen though. Well, they weren't like live.
yeah, and these were live. He went to his local bait shop and he had some live ones and they worked well for him.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah,
okay.
that's good to know. Yeah, that would probably do it.
Yeah, great, great. Okay, so Now that we got your rig and your bait, let's talk about where you're going. What are you looking for? What kind of structure? Is there any, where are you targeting these sheep's head?
Okay. So again, we're kayak fishermen, so we have, the ability to kind of get out on the water, but also get really tight to spots that a lot of times the boats won't get to. So I guess I have personally like several different kinds of spots. Like I'll have docks, pilings, seawalls, jetties, and then there's also a few spots that I have marked on my Garmin are just like underwater structures. So rock piles or just big chunks of oyster bed, but things you can't see above the surface. And I will usually cross off any structure that is not at least 6 feet deep. That's kind of my minimum. Yeah, anything shallow, I just, because it's such a, like for me in the kayak, it's such a vertical fishing that if I get, I mean, you could probably push it in 5 feet, but you get too shallow, then you're not really going to get, enough water where I feel like you just spook them off.
Okay.
And I feel like they kind of like that deeper water.
Okay. Okay. And then with that, is there a tide that you like, incoming, outgoing, just water moving? What do you usually, your perfect day and it's like, hey man, this is all lining up.
I would go the end of the incoming slack and then the next few hours of the outgoing.
Okay.
That would be like my perfect,
So that
perfect
high
set tide.
tide where there is plenty of water underneath the dock or bridge or wherever you're.
Yeah, for sure,
Okay.
for sure.
Okay.
I have a lot of spots where I won't even touch if it's not at least midway through the tide cycle.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. Well, matter of fact, I think this weekend, I think high tide. I'm trying to think back now. It's probably right around 10 or 11 o'clock. So, it would be that the upper end of that hump of the high tide for this weekend. So yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Perfect.
Don't have to
Yeah.
get up too early and freeze, and the sun will be
Oh
up and
yeah.
be nice and warm, and hopefully it's not raining. Knock on wood. So, but
That's always good when it works out like that.
yeah, yeah. So as far as docks and bridges and stuff, you said chumming the barnacles and stuff off. Is that what you're looking for docks? I've always heard look for the old decrepit docks that have all the growth on them. So is that true? Is that hold true?
Yeah, for sure. Like, and I know it's funny because some of the places around us, when I'll go out, like I'm like, oh, they just replaced that dock or those pilings. Like, that's no longer a spot for me, at least for a few years, because they're gonna pick off whatever's on those pilings, and if it's not there, I don't think it's gonna hold the fish. So yeah, old, decrepit dock, seawalls, just junky stuff that people don't want to get near because they don't want to hit their boat or whatever, or get snags. Like the more snags you get, the better.
Yeah. So looking for a lot of just
Hmm.
crap underneath the water. That's where they're going to be hanging out. So what you're telling me is I need to bring a lot of bottom sweepers or whatever because if I'm not getting
Yeah,
snagged, I'm not catching fish.
yeah,
Okay.
I go through a ton of hooks,
Okay.
tons of them.
All right. Well, that's going to please Lefty
Hmm.
quite. So, all right. Good. Good. So, biggest sheep's head. What's your PB?
uh, 24 inches has been that's my biggest so far.
No kidding.
Yeah,
That
grain
had to be a
strand
hell
in.
of a fight.
Yeah, and that one was on that little 5 foot ugly stick too.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Did he take you for a ride?
Oh yeah, I couldn't. It was like 5 minutes probably, because it's just you try to get them close to net them, and they just keep diving down. It's probably one of my like favorite fish to fight because they're just like bulldogs.
Yeah.
They just keep digging, and um, yeah, that little ugly stick it's a champ. It's sensitive where you can still feel the bite because you can't. It's such a niche piece of gear that like you can't be throwing like a 7.2 or like a 6.8 because it's too long to get in tight on structure. So you need something short but that you still have enough backbone to get the fish in, but then it's got to be sensitive enough to get the bite.
Right.
It's a real, niche piece of gear.
Right. And that's where, I think the shortest rod that I have that I'm going to pull a reel off of is a 6.6, and that's the
Hmm.
shortest I've got. And, I've heard the same thing that you just said, if you can get that 5'11", 6 foot, whatever, is kind of the ideal because you're stuck, underneath a dock, or
Yeah.
whatever. Um,
Yeah, and it's probably more of a kayak thing than anything. Or if you're like a land-based sheepshead guy or a boat, it probably doesn't matter because you're not going to be maybe as tight as like, sometimes I'm literally under docks
right.
or under bridges or whatever where you're kind of really in there where you don't want a long rod.
Yeah. There's another gentleman that I watch a lot of his videos. His name is Christian, and his YouTube channel is
Mhm.
Make Time for Fishing, and just another great sheepshead fisherman. And that's where he camps out. I mean, he holds on
Yeah.
to the piling, and he just sits there and vertical jigs right next to the piling. So
Yep.
yeah, that's. I mean, there's
Yeah,
there's
that's
been times I remember a couple of videos where he'll peek out into the creek and it's pouring down rain, and he's under there and he's nice and dry. And I was like, yeah, man, that's the kind of fishing I want to do.
I've made some friends with folks when I've been fishing under their docks and they come out and next thing you know, you're stuck there 30 minutes having a conversation about who knows what.
Yeah, exactly. So okay, so sheepshead, they are known as the convict fish. They
Hmm.
steal your bait. I mean, it's really soft bites. So, what is your technique to feel that bite? How do you get to, that sensitivity in your hands or the rod to know that you have hooked up on a sheep's head?
Yeah, it's I wish I had like a perfectly articulated technique for that, but it's just one of those things that you just got to feel out over like, hours of kind of doing it. And there's some days when I'll go out and maybe I just don't have it and I go through like 12 crabs and maybe catch one fish.
Okay.
It's I think the big thing is to not be glued to the bottom because if you're kind of glued to the bottom, you don't feel like kind of anything. But if you're like, a couple cranks off the bottom or mid water column, whenever you have that, that take, and you have a sensitive enough rod, you're going to kind of feel it. Now you're going to get a lot of bycatch. So if you're getting those thumps and you're setting it, there's a lot of puffers around. You get a lot of those baby grouper, pinfish are tough too. So
Okay.
I would say if I feel that thud, I'm usually setting it pretty quick. And then if I, reel up, don't have anything, I drop down the next time that I feel that thud. Instead of doing like a quick set, I'll kind of just drag into it. And I've
Oh,
caught a
okay.
lot kind of doing that kind of hood sec too.
Okay. So almost wait until you feel the weight and then kind of setting
Hmm.
into it. Okay.
Exactly.
All
Yep.
right. So are you feeling a tick and a thump when they take it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. You
Yeah.
get that too.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
All right. And then you're talking about bycatches. I'm assuming redfish has got to be a bycatch of that, especially with fiddler crabs and
Yep.
maybe even black drum. If you're dropping anything down, they've all got to be all hanging around
Yeah.
the same spot too.
Yeah. Especially, um, I notice late summer is when I'll get a lot of the bycatch in terms of, excuse me, the reds and the black drums. They kind of all like stacked up in those holes with the sheepshead.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I say bycatch almost like it's a bad thing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hey, a redfish, a black drum, whatever. I'll take whatever's going to be pulling on the line, man. I'm dropping it down. Pufferfish, yeah, I can do without a pufferfish. But,
A lot of oyster toads too, unfortunately. Those
oh
are
yeah,
fun.
I bet. Okay, so what's your PB oyster
Oh,
toad fish?
I caught a giant down in Pawleys this summer. I thought I had a giant sheep's egg because it just had wrapped me up. And I was like trying to get it out of the snag and I could feel it pulling. By the time I got it, it was a giant toadfish. I forget what it was on the board, but it was a stud.
Jeez, man, I hate those things. I even hate touching them because they're
Yeah,
mushy and they're just, God, it's just a nasty fish. Just a
they're snappy
nasty.
too. They like if you get like the pliers near their mouth, they're like snapping at you.
Yeah, exactly. Gosh. Um, so Everett had a question. He said, ideal water depth. So could you just jump back real quick and talk about your ideal water depth?
Yep. So my minimum is usually around 6 feet. Sometimes if it's, if I'm out on the wrong tide, I'll go down to 5. But it's for me in the kayak, it's such a vertical fishing that, 6 is the minimum. I have a few spots that are like 15, 16 feet that I know I can catch them at.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like when it's deeper, you have a chance for them to kind of be all over the water column, so you can kind of target them a little better.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Heath, Heath just put in there, should we start a junk fish slam challenge? Yeah. No, we don't need to because you guys wouldn't have a chance. I'd win it. So, no, we're not even going to start that one. You guys wouldn't have a chance. So, I catch so much crap and lizard fish and ribbon fish, and man, it's awful.
The
So,
lizard fish,
yo,
plenty of those around.
those things, man. Ridiculous. But guys, we're actually coming up on the 30 minutes. So if you have any more questions, throw them into the chat box real quick, and I'll throw them out there to Steve. But guys, if you haven't been over to his YouTube channel, Coastal Carolina Living, I do have a link in the description of this video, or just search Coastal Carolina Living. It'll pop up, and give him a follow. Watch those videos. It's awesome. And, he does everything. See, you've been deer hunting. Um, I've seen a couple of quick shorts, but they were like nighttime. What are you looking at when you were doing that?
Yeah, we do quite a bit of nighttime hog hunting and coyote hunting.
Oh, okay. All right,
That's
fantastic.
kind of like what we do in the winter a lot of times, just to kind of
Yeah,
there's not a whole lot to hunt really, so we're like, good time to chase the pigs when it's not
yeah.
75 and humid.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I do know that you're leasing some land, and have you been seeing any turkeys running around? I've been seeing them all over the place, and we're starting to kind of come up on turkey season here. That back end of March, beginning of April. So are you seeing the gobblers running around?
I've got we've got some ag fields around our lease, and every time I drive there, I'm like, oh, look at all the turkeys, look at all the turkeys. But they don't want to make that like several hundred-yard trek, to our lease. I haven't been able to entice them to do it yet, but they're around there. They're just never
I'm
coming
surprised
around.
they haven't. Now you have a feeder, right?
Feeders, food plots, yeah, all those
Yeah,
good
I'm
things.
surprised they haven't made their way in and started getting on that
Yeah,
corn or whatever you're throwing down there.
we've got tons of quail that'll come through, and I've sat in a couple of my hunting blinds, and I've watched the quail come in and just pick at all the seed heads or whatever's in the food plots. But yeah, the turkeys they like those ag fields for whatever reason. They don't want to
Yeah.
give those up.
Yep, and that's where I see them. The soybean fields. That's
Yeah.
where I see it, the majority of the turkeys right now are the
Mhm.
soybean fields because they just came in and they just harvested. So
Yeah.
whatever little beans and hulls and stuff that weren't picked up by the combine, they're out there just getting fat and happy. So that's
Oh
that's
yeah.
where they're hanging out. So I'm an old ag guy. I grew up on farms, and
Yeah.
I used to deer hunt back in Illinois where I grew up, and we would bow
Okay.
hunt the cornfields. And a lot of the guys, my uncles, they all planted corn and beans. Well, they would leave, basically box out their fields and leave about 12 rows of corn up. And so we would actually stalk through the
Hmm.
rows of corn. So we'd kind of step through, we'd look down both sides and step through and then look down, and all of a sudden, man, there'd be three or four deer just sitting there, and it's, oh man,
Yeah.
it's crazy because they're not there and then they're there. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Especially with the corn out in the Midwest, right? The stalks get pretty big. They could really hide in there.
Yeah, 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 the deer get be monsters. So, but all right, guys, I appreciate everybody stopping by. Steve, thank you so much for dropping all the knowledge that you got. Guys, go give him a follow. Look at his videos again, just full of knowledge. I know I'm going to go out this weekend and I'm going to put that knowledge to work, and hopefully, I can. Show off a few pictures and just have a good time. I don't even care if it's a 10-inch sheepshead. I've never caught one. I have
Okay.
I've never caught one. So you talk about rookie, newbie, whatever, call me whatever you want, getting out of my diapers, yeah, I have never done it, and something I've always wanted to do, and I'm committed to it, and I'm go. Oh, one last thing. Have you ever caught them on artificials? Any type of an artificial lure?
I was just going to bring this up because I remember your video from was it last spring or last winter where you had those little artificial crabs?
Yeah, yeah,
I've had the same ones, but I think when you were dropping down, you caught like a stud flounder on it.
yeah, yep,
I've caught, I've caught one on there. It was a smaller one, but yeah, I did it. I don't think it just didn't have the scent. Maybe if you put some Procure on it, it might, entice them a little bit more.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm definitely taking it with me, so
Yeah,
I'm gonna drop it down just to see what happens. So,
heck yeah.
but, but again, Steve, really appreciate you. Thank you so much, guys. We will do all of this next week. If you can get out into the water, be safe. And one of the things that I looked up the other day, and it's kind of been on my mind, is I think I want to kind of start to end these lives with kind of my mantra is, conservation starts with you. Release a fish so somebody else can enjoy it. So, again, guys, really appreciate everybody. I will see everybody next week. Steve, thanks again. Really appreciate
Thanks, Chris.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Yes, sir.
you.